Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope that you are all good. In today's video we are going back to basics with acrylic application. Now I have already done a lot of my prep off camera, so I've done all of the removing of the cuticle and I've applied my tips as well. So here I'm just going to come straight in and apply my dehydrator. This is going to remove any moisture from the nails and dehydrate the nail plate, and then we're going to come in and apply the primer as this primes the nails ready for your acrylic. Now if you would like to see a prep video, let me know in the comments below and I will try and record one of those. A lot of the time I tend to do this off camera because I'll just be sitting there doing it, and then I think I don't know if it's very enjoyable to keep watching prep, for example, but it has been a while since I've left it in a video. So if you would like to see that, like I said, let me know in the comments below. Then I am going to come in on this set and apply a thin clear base. This is optional, so we're going to be doing a plain one color set of acrylic nails using a core strength powder. So technically you don't need a thin clear acrylic base. For one moment, let me jump in actually and show you guys the products we're going to be using. So we're using the Diamond Nail Supplies acrylic system. So I've got their Monomer, their Clarity, which is their clear acrylic, and then their core color that I'm going to be using is Bare, which is a natural pinky white shade. So like I said, first of all, I'm going to come in and apply a thin clear acrylic base, and I'm pretty much just applying this to my natural nail plate using a very small bead of acrylic, and I'm just going to blend it over the tip. I'm not taking it all the way down over the tip. So like I said, I like to do a clear acrylic base, but it is optional. You don't, if you're doing a full cover core set of acrylics, you don't need to do a clear base. You need to have a clear base down under things like glitters, and if you're going to be layering nail art, it's helpful. A lot of people will do a thin clear acrylic base if you're going to be doing a design set. So say you've got lots of lots of glitters, lots of nail art going on. When your client comes back for an infill, or if you're working on your own nails and you want to do an infill, it's easier to have a clear base so you can file off all of your nail art back down to the clear base, infill the clear base, and then you can do your new nail art design. So when you are doing a plain core acrylic set like we are today, you don't need a clear base, but I just really like to do one. I find that clear adheres to my nail plate better than any other acrylic. I am a problematic lifter when it comes to acrylic, and lately I haven't done as much acrylics, so my application isn't as great as what it could be. So doing a thin clear acrylic base, I just find helps the process. So I've always got into the habit of always doing this thin clear acrylic base. So that explains why I'm doing it. But if you want to skip this step and just come straight in with your core powder, you absolutely can. Now, when I'm doing my thin clear acrylic base on a set like this, I don't need to take it all the way down to the tips. If I was doing glass nails or nail art, then I would. But as you can see here, I'm just predominantly applying this to the natural nail. I have blended in those tips, but I find coming over with that small bead of clear acrylic gives us a super smooth surface to work on when it comes to our next bead of acrylic. So like I said, I'm only using a very small bead of acrylic, keeping it on the medium to wet side. I'm going to place it down on the nail, tap it up into that cuticle area, getting as close to the cuticle and skin as I can without touching any of the cuticle or skin, as this is going to cause lifting. And then I'm just gently blending this down over where that tip meets the natural nail, and it just gives us that really nice base to work on. Now, I said in one of my previous videos that I felt like I needed to go back to basics with acrylic application. Years ago, it was all I used to do. I only ever used to do acrylic nails. Then lately I've been doing, or the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot more gel polish, a lot more stamping. So I don't do acrylic nails as much. And I find if I don't work with acrylic, I find it really hard to pick back up again. So I wanted to just go back to basics, as in one of my last videos, I really struggled just doing a full plain nail. So I thought rather than just practicing off camera, I would record practicing and going back to basics with the acrylic application so that I could share it with you guys as well. So now let's apply and build up our nails. So I'm going to do this I wanted to do this in the 3 bead method, because I'm using a size 8 brush, and I tend to find that when I'm working with a smaller brush, that is easier to work in the 3 bead method. On this first nail, I do believe I do 4 beads because, like I said, I've been struggling a little bit with that acrylic application. Now, when it comes to applying your acrylic, there's loads of different methods and you're going to find one that works for you. Back when I was using a larger acrylic brush, can't get my words out today. Back when I was using a larger acrylic brush, I tended to do this kind of length nails in 2 beads. But you know, it's going to depend on how you like to work with your acrylic and the size of the brush you're using, as well as how you've been trained, the length of nails you're working on and things like that. So don't stress if you use more or less beads than someone else, or if you prefer using more or less beads than what you were originally trained in. So on this, we'll talk through the steps on the next nail because we've missed pretty much half of this nail. But what I wanted to also say is this particular core color is really lovely to work with. It's a very natural pinky, milky pinky shade, and one of the things I really loved about it is once I had applied it, filed, buffed and top coated, it kind of gives off a very natural ombre effect. I end up putting a matte top coat over this set of nails so you don't notice it as much. But in the next video, we're going to do some nail art over these nails and then I go glossy. And when we've got the glossy top coat on, it gives off this really pretty natural ombre look, which I thought was brilliant because ombres can be quite tricky to do. So this color, especially if you're applying it over quite pink nail beds, then you get the pink from the nail bed showing through, and then obviously it's a milky white. So it just gives you a really simple ombre look without actually having to do an ombre. But anyway, we're just finishing off this nail. I'm trying my best to keep my cuticle application as neat as possible. You want to build up your apex, which is what I'm just showing you guys here. Like I said, we will talk through the steps on the next nail, but when you're doing your acrylic application, that is the main thing. You want to make sure that you're getting a nice neat cuticle application without touching the skin or the cuticles, and you want to make sure that you're building up the strength and the structure of the nail. So you want to make sure your apex is in that back third of the nail. Apex placement is another thing that differs from person to person, kind of thing. Roughly it's always going to be in the same place, but for example, we have what's sort of known as the European apex, which can be a bit further back than what I've done here, and then the more traditional looking apex. So again, it comes down to personal preference or what you've been trained in. So let's talk application. As you can see, I've picked up a medium size bead and I'm trying to work on the medium to dry side, as that's my preference of working with my acrylic. I've placed it down onto the nail and I'm blending the back of that bead into the clear base, so there's not a huge ridge basically for our next bead of acrylic to come over. And then I'm patting and pressing and walking this down to the tip of the nail. So as you can see, I'm pressing the center to move out that acrylic to the sides, and then I'm pulling those sides down towards the tip of the nail. And what you are basically wanting to do is build up your nail without pulling too much of that acrylic off. So when you are patting and pressing and pulling it into place, you want to make sure that you're using quite light strokes, not too much heavy pressure, because that's going to pull your acrylic off and then you're kind of just wasting your acrylic and not getting anywhere with building up your nail. Now I've started here with working on the tip end of the nail first and then coming in at the cuticle and apex area. Again, this comes down to preference. You can do it the other way around if you prefer. To be quite honest, I use both methods and it just depends on how I'm feeling on the day. So next we're going to come in with our second bead of acrylic, and I've placed this down roughly in that apex area and I'm pushing it up towards the cuticle area. So to get it nice and close to my cuticle, I'm using the tip of my brush to push it up into place, and then the belly of my brush to start patting that acrylic and pulling it down into place. Now another thing to bear in mind is it's quite warm here in the UK at the moment, so your acrylic dries a lot quicker than what it does in the colder months. So here I'm struggling to blend this bit of acrylic out a little bit. One, I think I'd worked a little bit too dry with it, and two, the temperature as well. So I'm just working with a little bit more pressure with my brush because it is starting to set. And then because it didn't blend out perfectly and because my tip is a little bit thinner than what I want it to be, I'm going to come in with another bead of acrylic, blend this back to help build up that apex a little bit more, and then gently blend it forward so that we've got a nice smooth transition between the previous two beads underneath, and we're also building up that tip a little bit more as well. Then we're going to do exactly the same on the next nail. So I'm going to start off small to medium sized bead of acrylic and placing it down. Here I'd picked it up too dry and then I hit my hand with my brush. So you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to get monomer on the skin. So then what I'm doing is, again, blending that bead of acrylic in slightly to the clear base, just so it's not that huge bump, and then just gently patting and pulling it down towards the tip of the nail. Now my application, like I said, I needed to go back to basics to perfect my application, so I don't want this to be too tutorial style. I kind of just wanted to share my progress with you guys. But again, we're walking that bead of acrylic down. If you do find that you get a little bit there, like I did, that's come off the tip of the nail, you can either pull that off with your brush, like I did first of all, or you can blend it back as well if you feel as though you do still need a bit of acrylic there to build up that thickness. I like to apply my second bead slightly back from the cuticle. You can apply it closer to the cuticle as you get more confidence with your acrylic application. Then by applying it slightly back from the cuticle, it means you can push it up to where you want it to go. And when you are pushing your cuticle bead up towards that cuticle area, you want to tilt your finger downwards. This is going to let gravity do its thing. It's going to help pull that acrylic away from your cuticle area rather than risking that cuticle running back. That acrylic running back and flooding the cuticle area. Now it's a little bit hard for me to tilt my finger downwards and record because you wouldn't fully be able to see what I'm doing. So if I wasn't recording, I would actually have my finger tilted down a little bit more. It's quite flat here, but I've got a bit more control over the acrylic because I'm working more drier with it. But yes, tilt your finger downwards, and this is going to help you when it comes to pulling your acrylic into place and getting it to flow where you want it to go. I am always smoothing out over the nail with my brush as well. This helps keep your acrylic application on the more smoother side. It's going to refine it a little bit more. There's not going to be so many lumps or bumps in it, and then this is going to reduce your foolish filing as well. So same again on the little finger. Now with my little finger, I've quite a small nail bed, so I do find this little finger harder to work on. I suppose that's the same for most people. So I did pick up a slightly smaller bead of acrylic, and I worked a little bit wetter here as well. Sometimes your ratio can be off, and you want to make sure you're working with the right ratio when you're working with your acrylic. So as I mentioned, I like to work medium to dry, and I like to work with acrylic systems that work with that style. So for example, CJP is quite a dry system, and I do like that. Diamond Nail Supplies is, I'd say, more medium to dry, which is a lot easier to work with. Sometimes working with a too dry system can be harder to get the hang of. But when I started this set today, my ratio was a little bit off. So I was working too dry, and you could see that the beads were too powdery. So by the time I'd got to this nail, I'd got the hang of the ratio a little bit more. And then you can see I'm working slightly more on the medium side with it. And then the acrylic is a lot easier to work with and manage. So this is really important when you're starting out in acrylics. Whatever brand you're choosing to work with, play around with their liquid and powder and crack the ratio before you start applying it to your nails. I work predominantly now with CJP and Diamond Nail Supplies, but sometimes when you're switching between brands, if you're doing content rather than clients and you're using lots of different brands, it can be hard to go from using a wet system to a medium system to a dry system because you just forget the ratios. And then this was kind of my problem here, where I haven't been doing acrylics consistently. You just lose that knack. Oh, I have anyway. It might not be the same for others, but you lose that knack of what the ratio is and how to pick up your beads. When I have got back in the flow of doing acrylics, I definitely would do a ratio video, because I did one years ago and it was a really popular video. I think it's for the Glitterama acrylic system, and it was great because once I'd cracked the ratio for that system, and I could very easily just show how much monomer you needed in a brush and how much powder to that monomer to then pick up a good bead of acrylic. So here I just wanted to show you guys, always clean your brush after you're done your set of nails. So I wiped it in the monomer a few times and then on to my brush, and then just brought it back to the shape it needs to be. Now I did leave these nails to fully set, and then we're going to come in and file. I'm only going to show you guys filing on one nail. So I like to start off with 100 grit side, and I like to come in and debulk the very side walls of my nail to try and start bringing the shape back, especially if my application hasn't been perfect. And then I will come round and refine the nail. So I like to refine by coming up one side of the nail and then swing round and go around that cuticle area and then up the other side of the nail. And then I'll be checking the nail from all angles, and then I'll basically keep repeating that process until I feel as though I'm happy of how the sidewalls are refined. And then I'll start coming over the entire surface of the nail, focusing on any areas that might be uneven or any areas that might have a little bit more bulk where I don't want that to be. And then I'll come back in and fix up my shape again. So this is what I'm doing here. On my under arches here, my acrylic had gone over the sides a little bit, so I was just getting rid of that. Same at the very tip of the nail. And then I'll always, it's hard to see in video, but I will be pausing here and there and just checking all angles of the nail and then filing where it's needed to be. You don't just want to keep filing the whole overall of the nail, because you will end up thinning it out too much or over filing. And this is what it looked like in terms of filed nail versus unfiled nail. Then we're going to swap to a 180 grit file, and I like to just do exactly the same process again. So refine around, and then I will finish off my shape with the 180 grit file as well, as I find the 180 grit file gives you a nice super crisp shape. So again, this is a little comparison of filed versus unfiled, and you can see you're so easily with your file, if your application isn't perfect, it's so easy to then perfect that application once you come in with your file. So don't stress too much if at first your acrylic application is a little bit off or a little bit bulky, because 99% of the time you can fix that with your file, as long as you're careful and you don't over file. I'm then going to come in and buff these nails, so I'm just very quickly going over the entire surface of the nail, first of all with the 100 grit side of my buffer, and then swap in to the 180 grit side. This is just going to remove any scratches that are left in the acrylic from your file, especially if you've gone over or finished with a 100 grit file. You don't want to over buff if you're going to be coming in with any kind of gel polish nail art or gel top coat, so be very conscious that you're not buffing to a shine. Of course, if you want to buff to a shine and don't want a top coat, then go ahead and do that, but I wanted to come in with my Kiki London No White matte top coat. So I opted for a matte top coat because I quite liked how natural looking the color was to these acrylics. So I'm going to just come in and apply a thin coat of this to all of the nails. This matte top coat goes on glossy, and then once you've popped it into cure, it will cure matte. So you can see when we're applying it here what these nails would look like glossy, and you can kind of see what I meant at the start of the video, where they have a very subtle natural ombre look to them, which I really loved. I don't think I've used this a particular core color on myself to do full color nails with. A lot of the time when I do acrylic nails, I just do the nail art and the fun stuff, and that's why I need to go back to basics, because I remember my tutor saying to me when I first qualified in acrylic nails to crack your basics before you go out there and start experimenting with color blocking and glitters and encapsulating. And I did do that when I first qualified, but then I just spent a very long time just having fun with nail art and forgetting my basics. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments below, and I will try and get some more back to basics videos done. Instead of practicing off camera, I'm going to try and record practicing a lot more again as well, and sharing that with you guys. Here I'm just going to come in and finish off with my cuticle oil, and then that is this set of nails done. But do check back in with the next video, as on the next video we're going to be doing some reverse stamping nail art over the top of these, because I couldn't leave them plain for longer than a day. Although I loved them, I had to come in with a little bit of stamping, so that will be in the next video. If you did enjoy today's video, please do give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, let me know how you guys are doing. I love checking in with you all, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would absolutely love it if you hit that subscription button. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.